dawn in the Japanese countryside 35 miles from Tokyo. Every day of the year, Otake Risuke leaves his house at this time to pray. He always carries his sword. As he walks across his garden, he leaves behind the modern world. He moves back in time to the 15th century. In these few steps, Master Otake becomes a samurai warrior, in thought, word, but not in deed. He is among the finest swordsmen living today, a teaching master of probably the best martial arts school in the world. He does not teach a sport. At this school, the students learn an art of killing that they will never use. The second part of the morning ritual consists of exercises in the art of swordsmanship. The Japanese call this iai jutsu, the art of drawing the sword. Even now, life in Japan is lived on the floor, so it's natural to start fighting techniques from a kneeling position. Also, at night, a kneeling person is harder to see. While he practices, Master Otake always imagines that there is an attacker before him and aims his blows at precise points of the attacker's body. His sword strokes are aimed to kill. After each group of strokes, part of the technique is to shake the blood from the sword before returning it to the scabbard. He never takes his eyes from his imaginary enemy. The exercises are planned to counter an attack from any direction. To be effective, the art must be used by a warrior who has developed his willpower.
人食い取らぬ、取らぬ、恋人を傷つけられて、それで女の人がどんなに解放しても治らなくて、それで命を落としてしまった。取らぬ、殺されたですね。そうしたらその若者がもう悲しみのどん底から必ずその虎を敵討ちしてやろうと。それでもう毎日毎日夢を持ってジャングルをさまよって虎を探して歩きました。そしたらある日虎がジャングルの向こうに寝ているところが姿が映ったもんで、よし、この虎に違いないと、これが俺の恋人を殺した虎に違いないと言って矢をつがえて撃ったんですね。そしたら狙い誤ったずその虎に突き刺さった。そして2番目の矢をつがえてそろそろ虎のそばへ行ってみたら、なんとそれが虎ではなくて、虎が寝ているのによく似た石だ。その石に矢が突っ立った。そしてそれが評判になって村人たちが驚いて、弓矢が石に突き刺さったんだ。これじゃあもう一回やってみろ。であとはもう何回やってもダメなの。ドゥーンってみんな跳ね返っちゃうね。それはやっぱりもう石であるということがはっきり分かってからだからダメなの。恋人の形だって言ってもう一寸不乱に矢を追いかけたので石に突き刺さったって。一寸岩をも通すという言葉があるね。
All samurais sought perfection with the sword, not only in the fighting techniques, but in the weapons themselves. The samurai and the swordsmith worked together to develop the exquisite, deadly Japanese sword. Sword making reached its peak of skill by the 14th century. The process starts with a lump of crude iron. It is purified by hammer blows and by pouring a liquid made from ash over it. There are 6 men working in Japan now who can make swords to the standard of perfection of the old masters. And Yoshihara-san is one of them. Making a sword is a religious act, a blending of faith and skill, and the result is a work of art. A blade made by Yoshihara-san is worth about 10,000 pounds. Most of them are bought by collectors, and to his regret, put straight into bank vaults. The art of making a Japanese sword lies in the folding of the metal. It is folded up to 30 times, which makes millions of layers. Out of this process comes the lightness and strength of the blade. After the folding, the lump is beaten into its final shape. The swordsmith makes only the blade. Other craftsmen finish the polishing and sharpening and make the scabbard, hilt, and guard. Master Otake's own sword is 600 years old, and the guard is 400 years old. Both were made by famous craftsmen. The whole assembly is held together by just one small bamboo peg. Everything about the sword is practical. The beauty of its shape exists because an elegant curve is strong and cuts well. The groove is cut into it to lighten the weapon without weakening it, and to prevent suction gripping the sword in a wound. All teaching sessions at the school start with practice in the art of the sword. The students practice the exercises in their own time, but always watched by Master Otake. It takes many years to attain speed and precision, to get the control needed to stop the sword instantly in a focused cut. Perhaps the hardest of all is to learn the relaxed balance that allows the body to spin so quickly. To practice the techniques of combat, the school uses wooden swords, bokken, so that a mistake does not cause injury or death. Their teaching is based on the weak points of Japanese armor, which for the sake of flexibility did not protect the blood vessels on the insides of the arms and legs. Their purpose is very different from the sword-based sport of kendo, where the strikes are aimed at the protected part of the body.
この振りかぶり方、まだ後ろに行っちゃった。この振りかぶり方は、これで触らないの、これやるとぶつかるから、ぶつからないように巻き打つっていう上段ですね。そういうふうに。それで真っ向を切るようです。はい。面くるやつを体をかわして首に入る。それを稽古ではこう受けますね。受けておいてバッ。人間の体は動脈全部この内側。ね。だからこれを切るわけですね。これは草ずる、鉄板。これは腐るね。だからこの間へこれ入る。ね。傷んだと。これは転んだ時ですね。戦場で血のね、草ずるで足を取られて転んだ時。 面切ったはずなのに腹つかれてね。それで立ちながらかわして顔面でさらに立ちを回して腰にくる。それを体をかわしながら打つことでもう一人入れるくらいきましたね。これを絡んでこの首くる。こう打ちます。これをもうつきますね。お互いの円に取る。これは今度首を打ちますよ。体をかわして固定、下から固定、さっと外して相突きになる両方つけるね。はい。これがまだ戻らないうちにこれ。
It takes Otake sensei many hours to explain fully the meaning of one pattern of cuts, and 13 seconds to do them at proper speed. To enable contact training without striking their training partner, they redirect some cuts to engage their partner's sword. Each strike is simultaneously attack and defense. The students practice many different sequences of strokes. Each sequence is called a kata. They never practice free sparring due to the danger of serious injury. They always aim the blows at the weak points in the armor, although they don't wear armor except on special occasions. Master Otake has two sons. This is the eldest, Nobutoshi. Both have been trained all their lives, and they are now both very skilled. The first katas they studied employ single swords. They learn the basic types of cuts, slashes, and parries first, then move on to the finer skills in the more difficult katas.
Now, 日本で剣豪ものがブームで、みんなその強い、何回試合しても相手に負けなかったとか、大勢の人を切り倒したとか、そういう剣豪ブームがありますけども、あれは剣豪ものはほとんど作家、小説家ですね。そんなのの創作であって、事実的なものはほとんどもう 90% はもう創作ですから、実際のところは公表されていないんですね。
The school has always been based in the countryside. They have a tradition of practicing on rough ground to train themselves in real fighting conditions. They train with a great range of weapons, halberd, spear, short sword, and others, but always one of the pair has a sword. There are no formal teaching sessions. The students work in pairs, there being only room for 2 or 3 pairs at a time. Each pair works through a series of katas, and then their place is taken by another pair. All teaching is individual and is by demonstration. There are many schools in Japan that teach the samurai martial arts, more than 1,000 of them. However, in most of these, the techniques are so ritualized that it is hard to see them being used in a real fight. At this school, the oldest of them all, they are still truly martial. The students are not allowed to forget that men died to learn what they are being taught. The status of the school depends upon the ability of the teaching master. This means that Master Otake must be at the center of focus in any study of the school. Yet he dislikes such a concentration on himself. For him, it is the school that is important. He sees himself as the servant of the teaching and knowledge preserved by it. The school has great status in Japan. It's an intangible cultural asset, a sort of living national trust property. Once, most of the students used to be farmers from the area. But now, many come from nearby cities, or even Tokyo, 2 or 3 times a week. They come from a range of occupations: teachers, dentists, businessmen, accountants. There have never been many of them. At the moment, there are only about 50 active members. The school has always accepted any student who was prepared to study seriously. Though all the teachings were once secret, there was never any question of limiting the training to the Japanese hereditary samurai class. Students pay a small fee to join and an equally small regular contribution. New members must sign an oath before joining the school.
ここでもこの辺どこでもいいですね。これでこの先でやってもいいし、ここでやっても切れますから。はい。
The rules of the blood oath are: do not lie, be discreet even amongst your family, don't argue or fight or be impolite, avoid bad places at all costs, don't fight until qualified, and keep your oath or be punished by the god of the temple. The rules of the blood oath, like everything else about the school, were laid down by the founder, Master Choi Sai. Master Choi Sai was buried here in 1488 at the age of 102. Around him are buried many generations of the masters of the school. The tomb is set amongst trees close to one of the great shrines of Japan. When the founder retired from active fighting, he came to Katori Shrine, and there he started the school. He said that the teachings came to him by divine revelation after long meditation. Katori Shrine is one of the most important centers of Japan's oldest religion, Shinto, which is deeply involved with the worship of nature, especially as in the spirit of trees. It was in the open spaces of the shrine that the founder taught, and it's from the shrine that the school gets its full name, Tenshin, Shoden, Katori Shinto ryu. The founder was a Buddhist, but there is no conflict for a Japanese in worshipping at both Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples. Otake is the teaching master of the school. But there is also an hereditary headmaster, the direct descendant of the founder. 20 generations separate him from his ancestor. His house is built beside an ancient dojo, now used once a year ceremonially by the senior students. In it are the statues of the founder and his wife. It's rare for such an old wooden building to survive in Japan in private possession. For Master Otake, the continuity of the school proves the rightness of the founder's teaching. The founder had served and fought for a great family for many years, but when their fortunes declined, he decided that there was much wrong with a way of life that had no future. When he retired to Katori Shrine, he taught that the art of the sword is the way to peace. His main teachings are on 3 scrolls that have been copied thousands of times by the masters. The teachings are secret, to be given to the students only when they reach high enough standards. The master gives the first scroll after about 5 years, the second after 10 years, and the third is given only to the most advanced and dedicated students after more than 15 years. But then only if they are more than 42 years old. The scrolls are not just about fighting techniques, but include religion and philosophy. All these are combined in a comprehensive strategy for life that governs everything, advising even how to choose the position of your house.
だから陰陽学の方では自分が住むところ、これから城を築くところ、そういうところは辺りの草木が青々と肥沃な土地が肥えているところでないとどんな産業も成り立たないとこう言ってるんですね。したがって今度は北の鉱山、玄武寸これを守る。北は高くなければいけない。自分がこれから城を築くというところはね、北の方は高くなければいけない。北は高い山がなければいけないっていう。玄武これを守る。それから東は流水ね。流れ。清涼順これを守る。それから南は開けていなければいけない。南の山があってはいけないんですね。南の田野。広い田野。南は開けて陽光、太陽の光がよく受けなければいけない。それから盗の大道ですね。盗の大道、白虎順これを守る。それが玄武寸、清涼順、朱雀順、白虎順と。
Master Otake chose the building site for his own new house by these principles. He was uprooted by the building of the huge international airport for Tokyo, and the government helped him to buy a new site. It was not easy to find somewhere that followed the rules, but he succeeded. To the east, there is a small stream. To the north, a hill. There are open fields to the south, while to the west there is a road. These same rules were used to determine the site of the Emperor's Castle in Tokyo and many other important sites in Japan. The school has always drawn strength from its country setting. It has not depended on the whims of great men. It has been separated from the affairs of state. One reason, perhaps, why it has survived. Master Otake himself was a farmer until he retired to concentrate on the school. When he was forced to move his house, he brought 2 important things with him. One was the training hall, the dojo, taken apart and reassembled on the new site. The other was the ornamental trees that he had trained in the traditional Japanese manner, branch by branch, into the perfect informal shape. He is a deeply traditional Japanese, and therefore his new house is built on the ancient pattern. He lives in it with his wife, a son and his wife, and a grandchild. The young Otake began to study at the school during World War II. As a young Japanese, he knew that he would be asked to die for his emperor, and he did not know if he had the strength to do that. He heard about the school and went there as a student to see if they could teach him this sort of courage. After a rather dull and brief military service, he returned to the farm and continued as a student of swordsmanship. His master taught him the samurai code of honor, Bushido, the way of the warrior. For Master Otake, the popular idea of Bushido is over-romantic and misleading.
武士道とは死ぬことと見つけたるなんて言います。武士道っていうのはただ死ねばいいじゃないんですね。だから外国の人には武士道っていうと腹切りが武士道だと言われてますけども、物事をやることにおいて一味を捨てて死をかけてやれっていうことなんですよね。誤解しやすいです。あれはただ死ねばいいんじゃないですね。物事をやったことにおいて失敗したら、俺は腹を切って申し訳のために死ぬんだ、それじゃあ何にもならないわけですね。そんならばそんな無責任な話はないんですよ。本当はもしやることにおいて失敗したならば、生きて恥をさらしても生涯かけて償わなきゃならないです。その失敗したことについてね。それが本当の武士道なんです。本当の武士道っていうのは
The samurai reached extraordinary levels of skill in fighting. They also believed that honor was more important than life. So they fought without fear and were formidable because of that. Their code was harsh, but at its best, it led to lives of courage and deaths of great dignity. To be a great swordsman required more than physical skill and willpower. Amongst the subjects that they studied was a special mystical form of Buddhism. They used it in a practical way, weaving spells to cure illness and to defend against death in battle. Master Otake is well known as a healer. Many people come to him for treatment. When patients come to see him, he makes a spell suitable for their particular illness. The drawing is a shorthand for a complex set of gestures.
日本の軍学標本の中には日教ですね。日教が多分に密着されています。それは第一番の兵法の中に出てくるものがくじの円というのがありますね。くじ9つですね。くじの円というのがあります。これは輪表当社海順立在前9つですね。この9つの円像、これはインド伝来のものであってムドラーと言いますね。サインです。輪、これね一つ一つまた信言が入ってます。オンバイスラマンタヤソワカ、オンイシャナヤインタラヤソワカというような全部ダラに信言が入ってます。呪文ですね。連表。
Each position of the hands is another prayer, and all 9 together make the spell.
海、順、列、在、前。これが9つ。これがくじの円ですね。そしてこれが当円、
There are two ways of making the spell, either by making the hand prayer shapes or by drawing lines, each line representing one of the hand positions. It is then necessary to focus the spell, and that is why the 10th character is used. So for protection against drowning in a shipwreck, the warrior drew the spell on his hand and then wrote a 10th, water character. In battle, the warrior did the same to protect himself. Master Otake thinks that the idea people have of fighting warriors as Zen Buddhists is quite wrong. To follow Zen is to spend many hours in contemplation, which he feels is quite unsuitable for fighting men. They needed a practical religion that could put them quickly into the right frame of mind to fight. To complete the cure, the magical spell is stroked over the patient. She must then take it away, place it on a riverbank, and walk away without looking back. The training session for advanced students covers all types of weapons. For each weapon, there are special exercises. After the sword sessions, they move on to single sword against short and long swords. These were the weapons carried by the samurai until just over a century ago. They could, of course, choose to draw only one of their swords, but once both were unsheathed, special coordination had to be learned to use them effectively. Crossing the two blades is a way of blocking an attack without damaging the blades, and from there either sword can be brought in to cut the opponent down. Many fighting arts use a staff, called a bow by the Japanese. It is a brilliant weapon when handled by a master. The problem for a swordsman fighting against a longer weapon is how to get past it and reach his opponent. A well-placed blow from an oak staff can shatter a sword blade or a helmet, but the sword can make a lethal wound by the lightest of touches. Encircling the sword blade with the tip of the staff can flick the sword out of its owner's hands. The fighter with the staff must, however, always stay out of reach of the swordsman, since he has no close-quarters defense. Father and son practicing sword against halberd. These are the most spectacular and elaborate katas of all. The halberd is a deadly weapon, heavy, as sharp as a sword, and able to reach the weak places in armor from a distance. No good swordsman would permit this, and yet he must move in to attacking range. Because of the length and weight of this weapon, it is held in the middle for balance. To counter these powerful strokes demands great skill from a swordsman. He only has a slight speed advantage, and the halberd has the butt end of its shaft available to parry blows. The warrior's problem when fighting the long spear is different. The man holding a spear will always try to use it at a distance, and the problem for the swordsman is to prevent its powerful momentum striking him. The warrior must attack past the spear point. but his opponent can draw it back quickly. Master Otake uses his full willpower and energy to fight his way through, but even then it is difficult to close with the spearman, who retreats. There are certainly many other techniques that the school thinks are too secret to be shown to outsiders. They would include unarmed combat using particularly dangerous techniques, since they were designed for the battlefield. Yet, at the heart of the teaching, in spite of the concentration on the art of killing, the founder's message is one of peace. He taught that fighting is the last resort, and to kill is evil.
それと有名な熊笹の教えという教えを残しています。熊笹の教えっていうのは、香取の道場の近辺には今でもたくさん生えていますけれども、細い角ですね、笹ですね。そこへ文芸者が訪ねてきた時には、一手教えを願いたいって来た時には、じゃあ門人たちにその熊笹の上に御座を敷いて、そしてその上に長久先生乗っておしゃっとつぶれないですね、さっと乗ってさあどうぞっていうこと。そうするとそれを見た文芸者はもう見ただけで毛穴が総立ちになってね、自分が乗ったらぐちゃぐちゃっとこう倒れますから、それ長久先生は御座の上に自然としてもう座ってられる。その真似はできないんです。
Master Otake despises the samurai who went around searching for fights and triumphantly killing. He thinks that they led distorted lives and that it's wrong for them to be admired. They left nothing. But the founder of the Katori Shinto ryu left a family that continues after 20 generations and a school that has made no compromises in its teachings since the 15th century, and yet retains relevance for its 20th century pupils. The balance between the art of killing and following a moral way of life is one that many masters of fighting arts maintain. For them, and for Master Otake, the arts of war are also the way of peace.